welcome to Digital Talk Podcast, the podcast where we share stories with the wider community of how digital technology and telecoms can do good. Join me, Ian Ginn.
And me, Frankie Spagnolo, on our Discovery series, as we talk to our guests and find out about themselves, what motivates them, and help celebrate their projects and achievements.
In today's episode, we'll be continuing our interview with Mea Thompson, who is Chief Commercial Officer of unconnected.org, who are an ambitious charity making a difference by aiming to connect 1 billion people to the internet. For those of you who have not yet listened to part 1 of our interview with Mea, I highly recommend you add it to your podcast list, where we discover more about Mea's background and interests and find out who and what brought her altruistic motives to the fore.
So we are back. This is part 2 with Mea Thompson of the unconnected.org. We are here with my co-host, Ian. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. It's great to have Mea on our podcast. The first half, I think, was really interesting. And if people haven't heard it, I think there'll be interesting revelations about Mea and what she gets up to outside of work.
Not that much. I'm working a fair bit. But when I do get time off, then you can listen in and hear what I'm doing.
Well, on that point, if you're traveling, please download it and enjoy it en route and give us some feedback.
So, Mea, you are the co-founder and COO of unconnected.org. Tell us a little bit about the project, your team, and how everything got started.
Okay, well, I'm going to try to keep it kind of nice and sharp because I can go on and on about this question. But very high level, unconnected.org is an organization focused on bridging the digital divide in the world. And we do that by running projects to provide people with meaningful connectivity. And I know we went through that in the part 1 session. That meaningful connectivity doesn't mean coverage. It means access to the internet. It means the hardware. It means the software. It means the training. It means everything that you need to be able to navigate meaningfully online. So that's the focus. We've got a few target groups or a few target themes where we operate, which is connecting women, which is really important. And as we are recording this, Women's Day is around the corner. We're connecting students and making sure that people get access to meaningful connectivity and the digital tools at a young age for them to be able to grow up into the society, with the technological society that we live in today, focusing on refugees, making sure that people who are displaced have access to technology and services to make them get out of poverty, stay safe, communicate with their families, and also just underserved communities, including agriculture and commerce and trade, entrepreneurs. So we work with all different types of people, but the mission is always the same: provide access to meaningful connectivity to the masses.
What triggered you coming up with this idea?
Well, I know in part 1, when I talked about my dad, I got emotional. And it's interesting how grief works. I just cover that first because sometimes it comes out of the blue and just knocks you over the head when you experience the grief or smell of the grief again. But it comes to the surface, but it also means that it's meaningful for you. There's something that means a lot for you. So I think by the time that I had a good job with this fantastic startup, and I realized at that time it was time for me to move away from that startup and do something different. And at the same time, my dad passed away, which I talked about in the other part. And then I got introduced to these 2 amazing men, Andrew Atkinson and Ben Mansell, who had this idea about unconnected and how we can, make an impact on the world. And I knew right away, this is what we should spend our time on. This is something that could have an impact. It's meaningful. It was perfect timing where I was at the time. And then, the rest is story.
And the 3 of you together are a powerhouse of capability. And it's wonderful to see people like you guys in our industry really doing this kind of work. So with the Unconnected, obviously, this takes a lot of stakeholders.
Yeah.
Every project is unique to the geographical, what the needs are, what already exists, how many people. What do you need right now? What do you need standard? How can we call to action our audience for you right now?
Oh, that's a really good question. And like you said, to cover the first thing that you said, that each project is slightly unique. We have work to streamline some of the projects in ways where we can replicate what worked well in one region into a different region. So we have the puzzle pieces of the puzzle we have. We have a worked out model. So we know what we need to make a project really successful. So, and then when we are moving that project idea into a new country, we just need to find stakeholders for each one of those puzzle pieces, whether it be a satellite provider or a fiber provider or a hardware provider or software and trainers, etc. But we have the recipe. With saying that and with knowing that the recipe that we have has been so successful in the trials that we've done, we want to be able to replicate that recipe into more countries. What we need from you guys that listen in is both the awareness about this issue, about the digital divide. I want to be able to reach out to more people for them to understand the actual impact of digital equity, especially when we talk to the consumers about this. We've tried to do some fundraising, B2C fundraising. It's confusing because they were like, why would you bring social media into villages in Kazakhstan? And I'm like, but it's so much more than this. So awareness is one thing. We need to really get out the fact about the importance and how unfair it is that this is not the standard practice or standard access by everyone.
That it's a basic human right this today because it's an equalizer.
It is, and especially looking at females, because we know that technology is replacing a lot of the jobs. It's also creating a bunch of jobs, but it's replacing jobs that we have today. Majority of the jobs that technology has replaced is currently held by women. Women are a lot less likely to have digital access. And by just saying those two things, like we know that the divide is going to grow even bigger unless organizations and companies get behind this and work to include these women into technology.
So what are some of the key value propositions for these large organizations and the stakeholders who want to get involved with Unconnected to make the arguments up the chain about how to give money, give resources, give hardware, whatever it is?
Well, with the puzzle pieces that we have, or the recipe ingredients, so to say, we need companies to step in and become the ingredients. So that's why we're doing partnerships with the operators, with the OEMs, which is hardware manufacturers, with the charities on the ground that can be our kind of arms and legs, working with us on the ground, as well as, educational partners. So those are the partners we need to have in our recipe to make this work. And for them, it's really important because both they are a part of a growing movement for good, because all that we're doing is reported, so they can use the reporting in their ESG and CSR reporting, but also because it enables them to address a new market, because the market that they're now addressing haven't been addressed before with their services. So that's one. We need ingredients partners for this to work, operators, etc. The other thing that we need is funders. And these are the kind of, I would say that if we're talking ingredients, they would be the pot that would chuck all these ingredients in. And as funding partners, that could be people that believe in what we believe in and also believe that by enabling more people access to connectivity, we're stimulating across many industries. So these funding partners could be banks, fintech partners, because the unbanked is also the unconnected. So if they come in and fund our projects, we will then connect the bottom of the pyramid and enable them to access services such as banking, insurance, commerce, healthcare, education. So the other industries will be our funding partners to unlock the potential of what we're doing. And then we need the ingredients partners to make it work.
It sounds like quite advanced and you've come up with this great program over time. But initially when you started, you came up with this great idea, the will was there, but what was the challenges early on, and have you had to pivot a bit over time? How did you, go from 3 people, if you like, and then say, because you've been going for how long now? How long's the Unconnected been going?
The charity's been registered for 2 years. We've probably been going at this for 3 years.
Yeah. And so how did you, take that idea and start building this ecosystem and this whole plan out? And what were the challenges, would you say?
Well, like if you say startup, because everyone within Unconnected, or the funding team and management team, come from for-profit backgrounds. That's where we used to operate. So going into a charity capacity in the start was obviously a bit of a learning curve, but I think it also helps us in the way that we run the charity, that we have that background within the management team. The initial challenges was I don't think in my head, I thought that we will be able to make this type of impact that we are making today, because we started with connecting a school here or a girls' learning center there, but it became very quickly very obvious for us that there is a lot more capacity to build upon here. There is a lot more interest from these various industries to support us. And for us to be able to take their support, we need to be very organized and streamlined, and it should be all about the impact and the reporting back. So until we have really streamlined the project, now we can bring on these major partners because we know it works.
And is there a partnership that you're most excited about right now, or that really was like a milestone for the organization and its ability to achieve?
Yeah, there is a lot of partnerships that I can't really talk about now because there will be announced very shortly new projects coming out.
Well,
very large
congratulations
projects
in advance.
Thank you.
You heard it first.
Thank you.
Here.
Maybe when you send this, the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah.
But partners that have really helped pivot our organizations is both the Internet Society, who gave us a fantastic grant for our build out of our community Wi-Fi network in Malawi, which is amazing, which has enabled us so far to connect over 120,000 students, purely students going to the school with meaningful connectivity. Wow. Fantastic. Purely the students. But then other partners like the GSR Foundation, who is an amazing foundation because they don't provide grants which are earmarked to a specific thing. They provide a grant to our organization because they believe in what we do and they want us to use it to grow the organization, not to earmark it towards hardware or a country or a specific project. They say, we trust you, take this grant and make the best out of it.
Which is really hard normally when things get so earmarked into one specific thing, because it takes the connective tissue of administrative operations to make something like what you do work. Somebody like that can be game changing for an organization.
Yeah, no. So I think that the way that GSR Foundation and James, who we operate with there, the way that they're doing it is fantastic, because that is truly what charities need to be able to grow and expand and scale larger. So, but then we work with so many other partners and so many other companies that donate to us. So yeah, I wouldn't be able to call them all out, but there is many.
No, that's understood. That brings me to a question around size. I mean, the core team is how big? And then I guess you rely on a lot of volunteering as well.
This could potentially also make me tear up and get emotional. No, I'm not getting emotional, but I could be, because this is really so heartwarming that we built the unconnected.org purely with volunteers and ambassadors doing this because they believe in what we believe in.
Yeah.
They are putting their effort, their time, their network into supporting what we're doing on their own, on their free time. So currently we're around 50, I would say, people working with us in different capacity across the globe. They're all doing it because they believe in this cause. And to be able to drive an organization with that many people that are so motivated, that's just, huge achievement.
And it's interesting because it just wrapped back around to what you were saying about the question of AI in part one, right? And being excited and also having some fear, because what it knows is what we input into it. And when we think about digital equality, when we think about the biases of our societal history, and even now with who's feeding and inputting the imbalance to not embed, these past biases, or to use bias too much, right, into it becomes important, right? Because if it's just young boys learning mathematics, right, if it's just first world children learning mathematics and becoming engineers, we're taking into the future, of which I think AI is the next wave of computing and what's going to unlock this next wave of thing. So what you're doing on the ground with this is so important. What you do is inspiring. This is why I'm an ambassador and why Ian's an ambassador, because you look at the bigger picture, you take a step out. If you're those of us in the industry and you have any sense of responsibility to what we're doing at any level, all of us, each of us. And you have to stop and say, hello, is everybody calling Mea and donating stuff yet? Can we make sure, guys listening, if you know a large corporation who's looking for ESG reporting or CSR reporting, this is important on so many levels. It's not just about connecting people to 3G. It's about building an equitable future. And that's...
Well, in summary, you can't correct the past, but you can influence the future, right? So I think that's what you're saying. Like, there are biases built in society, which, this sort of initiative hopefully goes some way to address, let's say, and partially fix. But yeah, so I think, from our side, so shout out to you, Mea, on this podcast anyway. And great to have you. And you should listen to the episode which I was recorded, not because you don't listen to my voice, but I might have one or two things to say which are related to you.
I will. And just to really echo that, I might be on this podcast, but unconnected.org is built by so many people and so many organizations. And that's what makes unconnected.org successful, is because it's this kind of cooking pot of ideas, and not just, thoughts or visions, but like
action.
Feet on the ground, action, project in motion, learning from what we're doing, and make sure that we keep streamlining these projects. Because what we found doing all this is that we're solving a problem that's solvable.
Right.
We're working to fix a problem that's actually solvable, and we can see that in the work that we're doing.
At MWC, Matt's in the keynote, and this is something I spoke about in Ian in our wrap-up. There was an encouragement towards 6G and to really this investment gap that exists for the industry. Now, considering almost 3.5 billion people have yet to connect in meaningful ways, and therefore yet to have added to the revenue of our industry, do you have any KPIs or numbers around if we stopped and optimized our networks and aligned our efforts, even for 1 year, right? Like, how fast could we solve that? How much tangible revenue does that represent to our industry that's saying we're facing an investment gap?
Yeah, and we've done some calculations on that, and it's really interesting what you're talking about, both for the telecom industries, but also for other industries. So let's say when we're speaking to the finance industries and the banks and the fintechs, saying, if you support us to do this, we will be able to bring you back XYZ in revenue. By you providing your services, who these people want and need, that can help them elevate themselves out of poverty, that will bring you back a return on investment. And I think is the ROI that helps us in many ways in the fundraising, because we're solving a problem that's supporting a lot of the industries, even though they might not see the ROI directly because some of these locations are not as densely populated. But this is an industry driving problem that we're trying to fix.
Absolutely. And the fact is there is a direct correlation proven now between, digital awareness and being a part of the digital economy and GDP
100%.
and wealth of a country. So as you say, it doesn't affect the telco directly, but all the other industries, of course, are directly also affected, because the wealthier, the more knowledgeable the people are, the more they can contribute to the world. Wasn't that the term used at the event?
Earth as a service is what I was talking about.
Earth as a service, that was it.
Earth as a service.
Exactly. So that was like one of these terms, and it is a question of giving people that opportunity. But one thing I wanted to ask you, Mea, is you must be getting amazing feedback. A lot of people patting on the back. But
are you worried I'm going to cry again?
It's fine. Well, Frankie and I we were talking about my feminine side the other day.
Do you want to elaborate a bit on that here, Ian? Your feminine side.
Well, I'm not sure on the podcast is the right place to do it, but you should see me in high heels and a hat, and
it's not Friday today, Ian. Hold on.
But
listen, everything's fluid. We're moving into a new era.
That's it. It. Look, the question is around feedback. Is there any particular, let's say, feedback from a project or something you go, wow, I just took a moment to think about, well, really? We did that? Have we made that change to someone? Because a part of it, of course, is coming back to your first part of the podcast, or the first episode that you talked about your open hands. So you open your hands and then someone puts something really nice in there, but it's feedback to this work. Something that sort of touches you, or something which...
All the time. all the time. And people might say because the projects that we're doing gets larger and larger, so you might not take in the feedback as much, but we do every day from all the projects. And because we have a very open communication line with the projects that we're doing to be able to capture both the visuals and videos and the progress, both reporting wise, but also visually, we get this very firsthand about what's happening on the ground in the various, I think we operate in 17 countries at the moment with projects. I think the one moment, there's two moments, if I can share, that I know affected me personally. One was from the work that we did on the Ukraine border. And this is pretty early on in Unconnected's kind of life cycle, where we traveled to Romania and we kind of stationed ourselves on the Romanian side of the Ukrainian border. And we stood there and it's not really feedback, but it was one of those moments where I realized that we can make a difference.
That you were making a difference.
Yeah, I was speaking with this woman and we charged up her phone. I gave her a SIM card that worked in Romania and we had a bit of a chit chat about, what's happened. And she told me that she walked from her village to the border with her 3 sons, and her youngest son was, 3, and her oldest son was 10, and her middle son was the same age as my own son. And they had to kind of hold their eyes as they were walking past specific areas that were, the kids shouldn't see because it was such a lot of violence that's happened along that road. So that was one of the stories. And then when I looked around and I saw the kids, because they just got, a tablet and a SIM card, they were watching the same TV shows and kids shows that they used to watch back home in Ukraine. And they were laughing and like sitting together on this bus seat going to ship somewhere in Europe. And I realized, for these kids, what they're doing now is so important because they've been through like so much. And so that's one story that always sticks with me. And the other one was recently, the other day, I was speaking to a school in Malawi that we connected and I zoomed in to say hi. First, they were a bit nervous because I turned up on their screen. And then I shared my screen. We talk about, here's Malawi, here's Sweden, and, favorite foods and music and dance. And then I asked them, what do you want to do when you grow up? And at this point, I kind of had my PR hat slightly because I was like, oh, this could be a good story. They probably want to be scientists and nurses and how can we enable them through connectivity? But they all in unison said that they wanted to be soldiers. My first reaction was like, oh, I can't talk about this. Are we enabling, childs that want to become soldiers? But then when I thought about it, I'm like, this is exactly the stories that we need to share because this is what we are working for. We need to widen horizons for kids that grows up in villages where they believe that this will be their future. And by enabling them with connectivity, enable them access to internet and see the various opportunities that they have outside of that, that is what we're doing. So that's another, it wasn't feedback or praise, but it was the reminder in me saying, what we do is meaningful.
Yeah. And it is.
And that's what access to information and things like representation, are so important, right? Because young people need to be able to see. They need to be able to believe that what they imagine is possible for them. Sometimes, the hairs were standing. I mean, when you said that, that is not what I was expecting you to say. How do you recover in that moment? Because even listening to you secondhand, not facing these young human beings in the world, I had to collect myself. I think
because we work closely with these communities on a daily basis, we understand where those comments are coming from because those are people that's being looked up to in their communities, that's being well fed, that's being looked after. I was disturbed at the time looking at these kids, but then I realized, there is work that we can do here. And some of them probably will grow up and become soldiers, and some of them will not. Some of them will be scientists and doctors and nurses and doing other things.
Broaden the horizon, as we call it.
Yeah. That brings me to, you said affordability, because you said well-fed, right? Like they look up to these soldiers, they're well-fed. In the GSMA report on the first day, they said 5G phone is now affordable. That's $99 a year. Or $99 it's under $99 for a handset. How does that rate Or what's the delta truly in affordability from the communities that you're serving and a $99 5G handset?
Well, to answer that question, I would say it depends on the region. In Sweden, it's affordable, not for everyone, but for most people. In Malawi and Kenya, in the Amazon rainforest of Colombia, that's not affordable at all. And that's one of the biggest problems to digital equity is the affordability. And many people think it's the cost for the network, it's the cost to access the network. That's definitely not the case. Look at India. In India, you can connect for a month for under $5 for the connectivity cost. So the connectivity is so affordable, but the handsets are not.
Is the connectivity so affordable? Because you, myself, Ian, Andrew, yes, comes out of an MVNX ecosystem, right? Do you think that connectivity at the edge and in these moments has gotten to a point where you're able to deploy customized solutions in various regions because of that kind of thinking and the pioneers that sort of drove that industry?
It's also like a lot of regulatory frameworks around it. Like look at Canada, where obviously connectivity is not very affordable for many people because it's very expensive, while the regulatory framework looks differently in other parts of the world where they've been able to reduce the cost of connectivity. I think one of the focuses that we have from Unconnected in regards to the reducing cost of connectivity is to provide the funding and tools and access to local entrepreneurs and local ISPs, internet service providers, for them to build out the connectivity in their regions and in their communities, because they know the market, they know what people can pay and how people can afford it. So our focus is to enable those entrepreneurs to do what they know best, but to provide them with the funding and opportunity scale.
So you're building a little circular economy on the ground in and of itself.
So as they say, teach them to fish rather than
and provide them the tools on how they can catch the fish, like me when I'm going fishing.
Catching, not
well,
fishing.
You have to bring fishing in somehow,
yeah.
Right? Yes, exactly. There is only damn fish, they're not coming to Mea today. I think it's been fascinating to talk to you and welcome you back. Maybe there's some other people from the Unconnected that we could bring on as well. We'll talk about projects and how this is evolving. As you say, 17 countries at the moment. What next, would you say? What in the next 5 years, where do you see the Unconnected going?
Well, our focus this year, because last year we got great buy-in, especially from the telecommunication industry. This year, for us to really make a dent and connect even more people. I know we connected a lot last year in the millions of people, but for us to be able to scale and use these ingredients and our recipes in more countries, we need to tap into more industries. We're working right now on big projects together with the financial industry. We're working with the insurance industry, healthcare and commerce, all with the joint need to solve this issue. So with us getting all those on board and becoming more of a cross-industry alliance or partnership, or however you say, and utilize that to empower people on the ground in these locations to do what they do best, to build out their network, provide affordable connectivity and hardware. That's how we will succeed. So in 5 years, you're probably still going to see unconnected.org. We're going to be a lot larger in a lot more capacity with a lot more people or companies behind us. And hopefully in 5 years, we'll be able to see a big shrinkage in the divide. If we can keep doing what we're doing now and scale it, we will be able to make a massive impact on the world as we see it today.
That is wonderful. As I say, we're also privileged to be part of it. This podcast, as you know, is to promote a better world. And also, you've done very well in giving, Andrew and your team, Ben, a shout out, I think already. But beyond that, anyone else you want to give a shout out to about wonderful work they're doing? I know you say you've got maybe a whole raft of people and you end up in that situation where you don't want to miss anyone out. But still, there must be someone out there you go, at the moment, as I'm sitting here, yeah, that's someone I want to say thank you, who most likely isn't expecting it.
No, but I want to do a massive thank you to my husband and to my son, because being a woman in this industry and working hard, and as you said, Ian, spending a lot of times and days on the road, visiting projects, doing speaking, it takes a toll on the family. And many men, it's approved and it's allowed to live that type of lifestyle and life. For many women in the industry, it's not. But the person and the people that have enabled me to do that and to do my passion and to really run instead of walking to get these things done, it's my family. So that's why I want to give a shout out to them and to other women in the industry who's also struggling with combining personal life and work life, because that balance is really hard to find, but it wouldn't be possible without my family. So I think the shout out goes to them.
Well, I'm sitting here, hairs on my neck again.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much indeed.
Well, thank you, Frankie and Ian, both ambassadors of unconnected.org. It means a lot. If it wasn't for ambassadors like you guys, we wouldn't be where we are today. So my thanks goes out to both of you for that, and also for inviting me to this podcast. I had a good fun. It feels like I've been spending the last bit talking with friends about, my passions. So thank you for that. It was a great set.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for taking the time to listen to our new podcast. If you have any feedback or know of any stories to be told involving digital technology and telecoms doing good, then please do let us know via our email, getinTouch@digiteltalk.com. Also, feel free to send us a message on LinkedIn. It would be great to hear from you.
Before we go, if you've enjoyed today's episode and would like to support the podcast, then don't forget to give us a follow and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Also, if you'd like to leave us a review or share it with your colleagues, it really helps us on the channel.
Join us next time where we'll be interviewing the sustainability team of Dialog Axiata from Sri Lanka, whose project related to farmers using IoT to optimize their yield, and the holistic approach, which was the genesis for this podcast back in 2021. I'm looking forward to an update and uncovering what other exciting initiatives they're involved in.
Thanks so much for being a part of our audience today, and hopefully you'll join us next time.
That's all we've got time for, so it's goodbye from me.
And that's goodbye from him. Bye for now.